The horror, the shock. When an INFJ offends another person in any way, you can be sure they'll be stuck ruminating about it for hours, maybe even days. But what comes after? How does the empathic INFJ go about forgiving themselves and mending the bond after hurting someone's feelings? Welcome back, psychos! In today's video, we're going to be discussing the 5 things most INFJs do after unintentionally hurting someone's feelings. But before we get into it, we'd love it if you liked and subscribed to our channel, as well as to click the post notification bell so you never miss new MBTI content. Alright, let's jump right into the video, starting with number 1, denial and evaluation. Did I really just say that? That did not come out as I expected. Maybe I can play it off cool and cover it up with some self-deprecating humor. Sound familiar, INFJs? If you've ever accidentally slipped and said something too brutally honest to someone that isn't quite ready to hear it, or maybe you've said something with flattering intentions and it came out completely different than how it sounded in your head. Yeah, it's a terrifying moment for everyone involved. INFJs are kind creatures, and when they say something considerably rude and out of character, they can end up feeling just as shocked as their opponent. Yet, one thing for sure is that they won't be oblivious to it. If anything, when this introverted intuitive type notices they've said something relatively offensive, they may begin stumbling over their words or completely forgetting what they were saying altogether. As they try to subconsciously collect all the information they need to later rehearse and ruminate about it, INFJs can become seriously distracted by the unexpected turn in energy. Unfortunately, this anxiousness becomes notably heightened when they've accidentally upset someone in front of a larger group of people. Being on the spot with all eyes on them is the perfect recipe for the INFJ to simply close down and flee when they have the chance. Number 2, they feel extremely guilty. Peacekeepers and lovers, the INFJ truly hates hate. They hate all forms of hate, but when it comes to people intentionally hurting other people's feelings, they just don't see the common sense in it. And so, when they feel accused of this preposterous act, they can't imagine how the other person must view them, but more importantly, how the other person is feeling. INFJs are extremely attuned to the feelings of others, oftentimes more than their own. So, if this unintentional occurrence happened in person and the INFJ was able to capture the reaction of their hurt opponent, you can be sure this empathetic type absorbed the shift in mood. If they witnessed the change in facial expression or body language from confident to self-conscious or comfortable to fidgety, they will hold that image in their mind for a long time. Yet, most of the time, they won't do anything in the moment because they freeze. They haven't calculated this into their possibilities of occurrences. Not to mention, INFJs are known to be quite self-critical people who tend to experience guilt more often than most other types in general. Because of this, INFJs can end up feeling rather disappointed in themselves, specific to the connection they have with the individual they've offended. For example, if an INFJ teacher accidentally offended their student, they would feel terrified that it may happen again, tearing themselves up that they're not a good teacher. Or if an INFJ husband accidentally said something a little too truthful to their wife, they may end up feeling more guilt than their spouse feels upset, prolonging the situation more than it needs to be. So, how do they approach the situation after feeling utterly at fault? Number 3, analyze and decipher all angles of the situation. INFJs are extremely self-critical, but that doesn't mean they don't try to find ways to let themselves off the hook. When it comes to unintentionally hurting someone's feelings, the INFJ may at first be mortified and confused. But after a while, their introverted intuition begins to filter through the information they gathered from the scenario. They put their emotional reactions on the back burner and try to get to the root of the situation and where things ultimately went wrong. They begin to ask their typical deeper questions like, Would what I said have bothered other people? Was it my tone? Was it my body language? Was I overbearing? Does this person have a deep-set insecurity that I accidentally triggered? Sometimes, these questions lead the INFJ to an understanding that it wasn't their fault at all. And other times, they learn their lesson of where they went wrong and may have to deal with a little guilt and shock because of it. At the end of the day, however, whether the INFJ was in the right or the wrong, they ultimately don't want another person's feelings hurt. And so, this is right around the time where the INFJ begins to decide to A. Take action towards an apology, or B. Never show their face again. Which brings us to our next point. Number 4, they decide between repairing or running. Depending on the severity of the situation, the connection with the person being offended, and the INFJ's intuitive conclusions about the scenario, they'll finally get a move on with things. While this empathetic type's first instinct is to apologize, which they most likely already did in the moment, sometimes they just can't bother reopening that can of worms. Whether they're too embarrassed to admit their accidental shortcoming to someone's face, or they can't bear the idea of possibly being challenged on it, ultimately stirring the pot further. Sometimes vanishing out of the person's life or avoiding them at all costs seems like the most ideal conclusion. If it's feasible, that is. If not, they'll go with repairing the connection, even if it's not necessarily their first instinct. They definitely don't want to burn bridges if they don't have to. On rare occasions where they have no chance to repair or intentionally vanish, INFJs can convince themselves that they may be overreacting. They may mentally confess that sometimes feelings get hurt, and that's just one of the many beauties of human interaction. In these infrequent instances, it gives the INFJ a chance to feel a little more unapologetically themselves. In fact, this is also true when it comes to the INFJ door slam. If they knew it needed to be done, they can certainly stand behind their power and not bring oodles of guilt along with them. Number 5, they make an apology game plan. Now, when it comes to someone they truly care about, or at least someone they've concluded deserves an apology, INFJs will almost always prefer to go the texting, emailing, or even the letter writing route. Since they have a much easier time organizing and communicating their thoughts with a pen and paper rather than being put on the spot, written apologies are actually the INFJ's way of being the most sincere. In fact, INFJs can get so caught up in observing the other person's emotions when attempting to apologize in person that it can likely backfire, leaving them with no words to describe why they said what they said. Actually, the combination of their loud introverted intuition and extroverted feeling functions can certainly be to blame as to why the INFJ would find themselves in this predicament in the first place. However, it's a little different when they've upset someone in their closest circle. INFJs may find creative ways to make it up to their loved ones who they've accidentally upset, using their extensive documented knowledge of what makes them tick. They may choose to take an indirect romantic approach when it comes to their love life, yet they take the more sentimental route with their close friends, possibly over-apologizing at times. Okay, a lot of the time. Number 6, the unaccepted apology. Now, when it comes to the unaccepted apology, INFJs can feel a serious blow to their self-esteem and self-worth. Of course, depending on the situation, some confident INFJs can better play off the "I don't care" attitude, but other times they can fall into a serious downward spiral of self-blame and lack of confidence in their ability to properly communicate their thoughts, especially if their apology was turned down due to disbelief of the INFJ's genuinity or if it was a first impression scenario. This introspective type can rehearse it so many times that they begin to blow certain aspects of the situation out of proportion. They may take measures like holding themselves back from certain friends groups or family members temporarily out of embarrassment and the inability to properly explain themselves. Luckily, eventually, once an INFJ stops making such a big deal of it in their minds, it stops seeming like such a big deal on the surface. Well, That's all for today, Psychos. So, if you're an INFJ personality type, have you ever accidentally offended someone? Let us know what you did about it in the comments below. Also, make sure to leave us a like, share with your friends, and also subscribe to our channel so that you never miss a video.